really parse C++ too well, so it just does its best. Which is pretty funny. You'd think there'd be like some sort of C++ parsing thing that they'd be able to use, but probably what happened is somebody started writing stuff for like some sort of header scanning thing, and then they got to use that forever, and all the idiosyncrasies and stupid parts just have to be supported from now until the end of time. So we'll fix all these. Tier A, tier A, tier A. I mean, why use something like that, right? When you can use something like this, where you parse it yourself, where you just do your own crap with figuring shit out. Where obviously we should write our own macro functions and everything like that. Sounds like a real. I mean, the file for code generation and everything else is just 5,000 lines. So things went well when they were writing it. Alright, so this guy is overloaded member does not exist. Alright, so we've got we actually take the flow field first, so that's what's going on here. And then the component width height, blah blah. I think it's awful that it even uses a preprocessor. I think it's fine. Code generation stuff is an excellent tool. I think code generation is underused in the industry. Missing expected a pointer type for which? The component's there, flow field is there. Is it expecting a pointer to a flow field? Probably. It's probably expecting that. So it's not an output flow field, it's an input flow field? Is that what it's going to be pissed about? Missing blah expected in a pointer type. I can't pass by reference? I gotta pass by pointer? Is that what you're getting all pissed about? You can't pass a U class as a reference? You have to pass it as a pointer? Is that what this thing's gonna be angry with me about? I just wish the preprocessor wasn't like some sort of macro definition. I wish it was more data driven, something like that, where you had like some sort of markup like in Webland, where you can actually, maybe you could even call code on the thing itself, on the file itself when it gets generated. So instead of having this thing be some ridiculous preprocessor with fake macros and stuff like that, it's actually like a templating system for generating static templates of code. That would be, I believe, much more powerful. Because instead of like ufunction or something like that, you know, if you could do like $, blah blah blah, and not have it be so macro based. It might look ugly though, to a lot of C++ developers' eyes, though. I can kind of see why this would be more familiar. So, my opinion may be completely invalid. But Sinachron, if you don't like that they use, seems creepy that out-of-house users use their preprocessor. Well, they at least give you the source for it, right? So if they're injecting their own code in there, you can at least go read it and look at it. But I would challenge you, what would be a better source? What would be a better way to get all this information so that you could, in C++ land, actually call functions, you know, from like a visual scripting system? Because it's not like, you know, C++ has like this whole reflection system or something else there. You got to have some sort of data that you can model against your code. So I mean, you could use like a whole bunch of symbols or whatever, I guess. But there's a whole lot of other stuff they do, like changing blah 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 around and shimming stuff out. You're not super familiar with the problem they're trying to solve? Well, it's basically, I want to call a function in C++ and I want to call it a certain thing. Like, I need to be able to mark up variables that, like, if I had, you know, some sort of network synced object, I'd want to be able to mark up a variable on a class and say, like, this should be replicated over the network and all that stuff. And a lot of game devs, you know, you're going to have some sort of markup system for that, where you'd be like, okay, this thing should be replicated or whatever. And having it all nicely inline so that when like you mouse over one of these functions when you're in blueprint land, you know, you need to actually be able to read the comment that the developer wrote for the function and stuff like that. So if you put like a comment, you know, right above the U function, it will show up when you mouse over the function in blueprint land and all that. So, you know, it's basically, you need some information in here that people can add. It's not always as simple as you think. Alright, so we need a variable here. This is going to be a calculated flow field on here. Alright, so this is going to be calculated flow field object. Alright, so we can compile that, we can save it. Because a lot of the systems, like if you're in other languages that have annotations and markup, like Java or something else, where you can actually, you know, you have all the data for the class, or C# where you can just use parameter annotations and everything that are built into as part of the language, you know, you don't have nearly as many problems. Okay, so we need a function which is construct static flow field. We're going to want to call this get calculated field. We're going to want to call reset on it. Let's see, we've got our height map textures and distance textures. So if we got our height data and all that, we're gonna need to like recalculate this whole thing in one shot, aren't we? It's probably the best way to do it. So we're just going to get all the information together, and then we'll refactor this stuff once we actually have it all done, so that it does it in one shot and all that. Because this we're going to have it anyway, so we might as well just copy paste this for now. So we're going to need to call fill height array, and then we're going to want to call this static function, which is going to be calculate static flow field. So here we go, calculate flow field. The input is going to be the depth. It's going to be the shore distance to start with, right? Because that's what we need. Grab the width and height. Let's turn debugging on. Well, why don't we have like a variable here? Doesn't really matter, does it? We'll just need ticks on it. Yeah, that's one way to do it, right? Like, instead of defining the actual thing in code, you know, give them a slightly modified thing, which is a template for the actual code. And I like those systems a lot better, where, you know, that's kind of what I was saying, is I'd rather have a template generated system than a macro generated system. Because then templates, like once you learn how what the template language is, it's a lot more powerful than like a macro based system. But template code can get a lot uglier though. It's just one of those things. Because we do have a code generation system which I set up for this game. And templates for stuff can be real simple and really not simple. And you know, we have like, you know, this is just a simple file, but you know, it's like include your standard copyright, include your header, and you can just, you know, write your code in here, and then we've got these actual templated things. I guess we really don't have that much that's actually templated in this file, but it should be templated in the data. So we can do, you know, like for a list of things, you can actually, you know, do outputs. And I could totally see that sort of stuff happening. And then the code generated here is like super readable, which, you know. Templates, like C++ templates, I really don't like using, but I like using template generation stuff otherwise, where you actually deal with the generated code. Because then, you know, you write like a template file like this, and then I can go to my entity data. And I can actually see like all the stuff that got thrown in there by the template engine. I don't have to, you know, deal with like some horrible template crap warning or error that's incredibly difficult to parse. You just like, oh, okay, you know, here you go. The preloaded asset paths are these, you know, 5 things. And that way, you know, I can have, you know, what would be magic numbers and crap like that, and I can actually go define that in data, but then it's all statically built into the engine, so, you know, a designer can go mark something up in data and rerun the generation process, and bam, it's all code. That's C++. And if I wanted to do something other than just, you know, adding input paths here, I could actually like do a scan or something else. Then, you know, I have actual code I can deal with, not just trash. You know, I don't have to go parse through 1,000 lines of XML in a preprocessor. I can just look at the code. Yeah, C++ templates are just kind of nuts. Like how they generate the code and it explodes your code to be as big as, you know, whatever, and then the template doesn't actually get. You can't just like look at the templated code. Well, you probably can somehow, but then the errors are just all trash. I don't know. And then how you include them and do all that is just also garbage. It's just like, god damn it. I understand why this was done this way, but it's just so old. Alright, so we need to actually start doing this. Okay, so we have the create static flow field. The input is the... I guess we should have the height map, and we should have the distance map. So we'll do that. New calculated flow field reset. Alright, so the reset is going to need a call. Yeah, we're going to have to go through these paths and reset them. Alright, so we're also going to want like a tick once on this thing. Yeah, I forgot my class. It's like, wait, this is the start of something else. This will be the calculated flow field stuff. We've got reset. We've got tick once on there. Let's see. Should we cache the height map and distance map on ourselves? Probably should. I mean, we might as well. And we can always clean this up after we're there. This is pretty sloppy. We're gonna turn this whole data structure into just one thing for when we're finished, so I'm not too worried about memory crazy town copying crap. Primitive component with height. Alright, so we're gonna need a reset on the map. Water flow object. Easy enough. Just reset all the arrays and everything else. Clear it out. Alright, so we're going to want the mmap dot and I don't know, we'll just say to hell with it. We'll just use it as a structure for now. We'll have our output and simulation ticks and all that sort of stuff. So what we would do here is we would call this set for all that stuff. We would call calculate paths. We would then, I guess we're gonna need a different one. It's like discover flow objects, and that's gonna take. It's actually gonna take the primitive component, I believe. So we would call discover flow objects with the component. We call calculate paths. Then we would call tick. We'll just do it naively. And if debug otherwise. We're going to output what we have the output. So the output equals flow colors. If not, output equals particle colors. Alright, so what we're going to want, need to get the discover flow objects function. We'll throw that out here. I'll have to figure out exactly how to create this sort of thing. I think for now I'm just going to kind of write down the values for this and then just hard code it. I think that'll be okay for now, you know, and then I can work out how to do the geometry and discover stuff. I'd rather get all the hard math crap out of the way first and then do the discovery and everything else later. Because I can always plug in whatever I need to later, regardless. Alright, so discover the flow objects, we'll calculate the paths, which will fill out all that stuff, then we'll tick stuff, and then we can do fill color with paths, so we're going to out equals m path colors, fill color with particles, we're going to do out equals m particle colors, otherwise fill with flow, out equals m flow colors. Alright, reset will also reset the cached heights and the cached distances. Alright, let's log some stuff out. Creating static flow field of size %d, %d. Let's put the ticks in there too, with ticks. That's what we call tick, calculate paths. Alright, well let's save everything and close the editor and rebuild it. Yeah, try writing all this stuff in Blueprint Land. That would not be fun. to actually call our functions that we created. Yeah, these one-line if statements, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence on those now. Like I used to be like one-line if statements are fine, that's cool, and then C++ stuff where if you have a macro that's 2 lines and cause issues. Also after Heartbleed, which was caused by like a one-line if statement, it's kind of like Cannot access private member. Well, then we will just make them public because I don't care. I don't like them. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons not to like them. Yeah, that's one of the things, like especially if you're adding a whole bunch of debugging printfs or something else, all of a sudden you're just like, ah, this sucks. Yeah, I've also encountered people who like literally one-line if statements. So like instead of writing this like this, you know, the guy would just, he really liked writing it like that for like everything. And like he would write this crap all the time, and I was just like, no. Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, I was writing code in Java for, you know, most of my professional career. I'd say, you know, like 70% Java, 30% C++. And one of the things that, well, there's two things I really like in C++ that don't exist in Java, etc. Is, you know, like actually having a scope and being able to use being able to use destructors when a scope closes is just like so damn convenient. There's so many things that you have to do with like try finally and other crap, you know, with like auto closable in other languages that are just annoying as all hell. And like knowing exactly when something gets toasted. The other thing I like is goto, and not for the reasons of like using goto, as in to like go to someplace and like have horrible crap just like jump around. Just because if your language doesn't have goto, it means that you can't create some sorts of threading models where you can like you could store kind of your own stack and then save that and put it back on the stack when you call something and do crazy manipulation like that, which is sometimes extremely valuable for multi-threading. And not being able to do that in other languages just always pissed me off. Alright, so we got that built. Let's fix our blueprints. so we want the output here, and we want the output here. The component. We're going to want the water surface component. Slap that in there. Simulation ticks, let's just put in, you know, something like 100. And that'll be good. We're then going to want the height map texture, distance texture. We're going to want to duplicate this and use the, let's do the flow field texture. This is the texture to use for our flow field. Let's compile that, save it out. An if statement, then multi-line block of code. We had to spend 2 days to figure out if it was a glitch or not. Yeah, that's... Well, if it takes you a couple months to figure it out, then Jesus Christ. Somebody should have kicked that guy out sooner. Alright, so we're going to want to set the texture and then save it in a specific location and then call setup shader parameters. And we're copy pasting this stuff because we're going to delete all this crap later. We're going to need to create the texture from that, right? Fill height array. We're setting those to nothing, and then we're calling save texture asset, and then we're calling set on that. So we got save texture asset. So we'll set this to nothing. We're going to get our asset folder. Yeah, I don't really think I've been in that position where we had somebody leave and have like a big system that they were responsible for that I had to go do, because what I would always end up doing is I would have like owned all that crap anyway, because I was usually the leader of the team. After like the first year I was basically the team lead, so like I wasn't using other people's stuff without like really understanding it, because it was kind of my job to understand all that crap. So I have fortunately not had to deal with too much of that bullshit shenaniganry. I more just like clamped down on people and was like, dude, you cannot do this. I will literally like murder you in your sleep. Also, I'm the lead and you can't submit that. So, too bad. Alright, so we'll get that. The texture compression, we're going to set this to... Let's just do this displacement map thing. So we'll set it to nothing, get the name of the level, append static flow field to it, and set it up. So that'll be good. What is this pissed about? It's pissed about the colors not being passed in. Well, it has every right to be angry about that. Not month, 2 days. We started looking 2 months later. Yeah, okay. Sorry, reading can be difficult. He's trying to infect all 10 services with it. Yeah. Well, there's usually a reason why people leave. Yeah, the other thing that's really nasty is like side effects and if statements can be particularly annoying. Like one of them, we had like a connection manager in Java land, and basically we had like this void like, you know, on disconnect, and then like some sort of like, you know, client connection. And then we had like, you know, like we had like a connected clients map, which was like, you know, we had like a dot remove for the connection, and what this was wrapped in was in like an if, and then it would like m other map dot remove. So something like this, where it was like if like, you know, m the connected clients map actually got there, we had like another map of like stuff with that actually had like the client connections, and what ended up happening was somebody's like, does this if statement do anything? And then like they removed this, so they just had this like connected clients map dot remove, and what ended up happening was like this, it never dropped any clients even if they disconnected from the server, so it just like exploded, and that made it out to production. So side effects can be pretty nasty too, where at face value, you know, somebody just didn't realize what the code was doing, because it can be difficult to read code sometimes because you think certain words mean certain things. Alright, so we're setting the flow field texture. Let's go to the setup shader parameters. So static flow field texture, we're gonna grab that right here. Oops. Alright, cool, let's save all that out and close it. And I think one of the other amazing things is how horribly you can code a project and still have it be successful. Like, at least in the experience that I've worked with, actually succeeding in a project has almost nothing to do with the quality of the code of the project. It has almost everything to do with the other factors. Like, experience doesn't seem to directly correlate with success on a project. Success or good practices. It's usually the opposite. It's like if you have enough money or your managers manage properly, like, it sometimes does not matter. Alright, so we have discover flow objects, we have all this stuff. I need to actually fill this data out. We need to like create these things. We need to have like some sort of create or setup data. We need a setup step. Like setup for map. And what that'll do is actually initialize the color fields and everything else to null, or not null, but you know, the right sizes and everything. Set up the data arrays for writing to. So they ended up redoing it. Yeah, that ends up happening. Alright, so we need all these guys. We need to call init on them with all the F colors. So that'll set that up, and that'll give us like a white blank texture. So we should be able to call that then. Discover flow objects, calculate paths, tick, blah. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to hook up that tick function to an actual button we can tick, and then we'll get the flow object data, hard code that in there, so we got something to start with, and then we'll do the paths. It's kind of like, you know, making MMOs is super hard, and like EverQuest, I worked with some of the guys there. Like, they didn't even have a database for EverQuest, they just had a file system. It was really funny how they described it, because they didn't even know how to use like any of this like stuff that had been around for years and years. These are all just game devs working on, you know, one of the first MMOs ever. So they're just reading and writing the file systems and all this crazy stuff. It's like, you don't have to know what you're doing to be successful. You just have to only care about being successful, or at least prioritize success over everything else, and that usually creates the atmosphere that actually ships something. Yeah, exactly. That's the look. That's the look I gave him. I was like, Jesus Christ, really? It sounds terrifyingly bad. Okay, so if we call a construct static flow field, it's going to generate that height map, and then it's going to do absolutely nothing with it. But it should save it. It should create it. See it pop up. That's what we want. It should be blank. I mean, it's a little bit more than that, to be honest. Where are we breaking here? Save texture asset. Oh no, why did I try to use IntelliSense? It's probably that we've never actually called this thing and we created this bug earlier. So it's calling remove source data? And doing what? What is it pissed about? That this doesn't exist? It's going to be inside of this text source init. Well, we'll just walk through it. It's not like they use JSON files for the database. Careful what you say. I think they use just like unstructured text files or some crap. Or XML or something, you know, real basic. But yeah, you know, databases do a lot more than just have files, right? You know, they organize the data, there's indices, you know, there's locking and everything else, and, you know, various methods of sharding that all work and, you know, have consistency parameters and everything. So just using a file system on there, you know, like somebody buys a character or something, you're just like, oh my god, what sort of, you know, things that shouldn't be customer service issues become customer service issues. And also using JSON files for a database. I mean, just look at MongoDB, right? That's all BSON or whatever. Literally, your keys are JSON search terms. And that is mad popular. It's probably that the texture was null. It's probably what ended up happening here. So the texture was null. We went here. We created an asset, and the asset returned null. And then we tried to dereference it. So what we should be doing here is if text equals null pointer, we should be returning null pointer and doing a warn. Being able to make texture. You don't see how it would be possible to make a database with purely a JSON file? Well, it's not purely a JSON file. It supports binary, so, you know, there's at least that. But it's really just how you structure the files and have an index into it. But it wouldn't be one JSON file. It's a bunch of JSON files all scattered across with rules. And you'd be like, well, this JSON file is not really, you know, this JSON document is the entire database. And then you just, like, instead of nodes being, you know, just strings in line, they point to files or, you know, parts of files or whatever the hell, all the way down. Alright, so we're going to need to figure out how to use this uTexture factory thing. So let's look it up in the database, I mean in the code base, and see how other people use this. So texture factory, compression settings, factory create binary, pointer to texture. So, well, why don't we just look at the, what is it? It's probably texture factory.cpp. Well, we should be able to at least walk into it. But that's not too. Let's see if there's anything else that actually uses create asset on this thing. This thing doesn't even use the damn factory. At least not right there. Creates a texture given the appropriate input parameters. So if create texture 2D is probably what we want. In parent name. I guess this is factory create binary function inside of this texture factory. Let's see. Scan these files for factory create binary. Looks like it's in editor factories.cpp. Let's see if this actually gets called. And this is factory create binary on the texture factory, so what is this function here? Import texture. So we'll see how we're supposed to actually use this factory. It's not getting called at all. Alright, so what do we normally do for factory objects? It's factory create new. So there is no factory create new on this thing? Alright, well I'm going to be right back. And I'll figure out where I need to actually make this texture. I wish it was a little bit more straightforward than this on how I'm actually supposed to make it an asset for something. Of course, it was more straightforward. We had to delete our texture factory because it was in the wrong spot. So we could always just like throw our old texture factory in here. But I guess we're supposed to, like, this is the UFactory interface that this thing uses. So I guess it doesn't implement the factory, create asset sort of thing. So So this does support class. Don't want that. We want the... And probably what we want to look at is this import texture. Used by create texture. And that's a private thing? I mean, does this actually... Well, you know, I kind of want to just use this way with this create asset, so... Let's just see what it was before. We just had this sort of thing going on. And what is image utils? Create texture, 2D.